My name is Eitan Chatayat, and welcome to I'm That podcast, where I get to talk to some pretty incredible people. Some are friends and colleagues, some are clients, and some are people I haven't even met yet. On I'm That, we'll hear from them about who they are, what they do and why, stuff they love or hate, mistakes they've made, victories they've had. They're all known for something, but by the time we're through, the hope is they'll have revealed some things we didn't know about them. Our talk may be deep, profound, funny, who knows really. One thing for sure, it'll be interesting and honest. So if you're up for that, thank you for joining me on I'm That, and here we go. Hello, and wow, it's been a while. I have been out of the podcast game for quite a while, and I am coming back with someone very special today. I'm sitting down with Shemtov Hollinger, who I recently met as a war rages on in my country of Israel. And Shemtov is 29 years old, and in his civilian life, he's a certified nurse. He's also a pro basketball player. But he's just finished a 4-month round in his reserve duties for the Special Forces of the IDF. He's got first-round knowledge of what's been going on our borders, and we wanted to talk, and we wanted to share the truth. So, Shemtov, thank you. It's really great to be hosting you here, and it's our second time talking.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for your time.
It's my pleasure. I've never done a podcast interview like this, but I felt it was very important. As you know, I've been trying to express what's really going on here on the ground. And who better to talk about it than someone who has seen firsthand what truly is going on. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions, and the purpose here is to just listen and for people to learn, because there's so much disinformation out there. There's a lot of propaganda. People don't know who to believe. And when you see in the news IDF soldiers committing genocide, killing babies, when you see all of these terrible things, it's very dehumanizing. But IDF soldiers are ordinary people. I mean, for the listeners, I'm sitting down in a little office in Tel Aviv, and Shemtov's sitting opposite me. He's just a regular guy. And the idea is to hear it from you. So maybe, first of all, you can tell us a little bit about yourself. Just let's take it from there.
Sure. So as you said, I'm 29 years old. In my civilian life, I'm a certified nurse. So I want to just stop about this point and just let you guys look about how an IDF soldier that have been called a genocider and a killer and a baby killer and etc. is also a nurse. And this is like the kind of like where it's engaging, and that's how we understand that the stuff that are out there and the propagandas that people are shouting about the IDF is truly wrong. For me, as a certified nurse, I worked for an ER in a hospital that had an agreement with the hospitals in Gaza, that every hard case scenario and operations and surgeries that they cannot handle there, they deliver the patient to us. So I had the opportunity to treat people from the Gaza Strip. And also, and this is an interesting point that I don't know if I said it in other places, but I also had the opportunity to treat a lot of terrorists from the West Bank that just committed a terror attack or planned to do a terror attack, and the IDF stopped them from doing it and arrested them at night before.
So this is not in the context of the current war, this is just pre-war?
Pre-war, exactly. So for me, as a genocider, IDF soldier, like, if I was this description, so probably I wouldn't, agree to treat those people. Or if I do agree, I do something bad to them so they will end up their life. But this is not the case. Like, I treated them as my mother, as my father, as my grandfather, as I treated all of those kind of people, that are closest to my heart. I treated them as human beings first. I didn't look at them as the guy from Gaza with the heart surgery or the terrorist from the West Bank that just killed 3 innocent people, and I supposed to do something bad to him because he did it. No, I put it in aside, and it's really hard for me, as a Special Forces IDF soldier, and also as a civilian in Israel. My commitment to my people is to protect them and eliminate every threat. So it's kind of like a hard point, to stand over there and treat those people, although you know that this person just committed a bad thing. If it's like kill civilians or throw the rocks or even trying to shoot people, it was really hard to disconnect your feeling, but we have to do this because this is what makes us different from the other side.
So let me ask you a question. That doesn't just happen, doing the right thing. This is something that you are trained to do, taught to do in the army. I mean, how does that happen?
So first of all, I think we have to go back, not to the army point, to where when I was a young kid. My family, and I think every Jewish family and every Israeli family educate you to do the right thing and to act as human beings and to count everyone as equal. This is the first thing. That is where it started. And then when you go to the IDF is even emphasize it more, how you should treat people on the field and outside of the field as a civilian. So I think the combination between both that's what made me do those kind of actions and disconnect from the feelings that I'm supposed to have, like the thing that I usually, a regular civilian probably will do in the street, and do it as Shemtov, as the certified nurse, as a civilian, as an IDF soldier. Treat those kind of people, because again, as I said, that I'm looking at them as human beings and not animals like they looked at us at the 7th of October and even before. And this is what makes the difference between us and the people that perpetrated the 7th of October.
So I just want to stay on this for a second because I think it's actually very important what I said at the beginning about the way that IDF soldiers are being portrayed. I happen to think that the current generations, we're exposed to war in a way that no other generations have been, in the sense that you can see everything that's going on pretty much live. Especially on October the 7th, the Hamas terrorists, they filmed it and they shared it for the world to see. And even then, the people who are for the Palestinian cause were denying that it even happened. So this really is a war of propaganda. And the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, is really being dragged through the mud despite it doing absolutely everything possible like no other army has done in the history of wars to minimize civilian casualties. In the process against this enemy, both Hamas and Hamas propaganda, you guys are being vilified. The IDF is being vilified and is being absolutely dehumanized. I'd like to hear your opinion of that from a personal perspective of what you want people who are not familiar with the conflict, not really familiar with the IDF, not really familiar with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I'd like you to talk about why that's so wrong and how that makes you feel.
So first of all, it's disappointing, but I'm not surprised. I'll tell you why I'm not surprised. First of all, we got a social media. Social media, it's a really, really hard front, and it is really a huge impact on every generation, not only the ones that are between 10 to 30, but even more. And unfortunately, what the social media right now is showing is mostly support in the enemy. And not only the enemy, but the Palestinian people. Some of them are innocent, so it's okay to show that. But right now we are around 15 million Jewish people in the world.
Around 16, yeah.
And then you got 60 million Muslims and add on count of it the supporters, and on top of it the supporters.
No, you have 1.6 billion Muslims.
1.6 billion?
Yeah.
So even more, yeah. I'm not even familiar with all the exact numbers.
Sure.
But think about that. You got all of those people on the social media, the 1.6 billion that you just mentioned, on the social media posting stuff only against Israel. So eventually, if I'm like an unbiased person and go inside the social media, and most of the posts that I'm going to see is showing Israel in a bad light. So, of course, it's going to make me think that Israel is the bad guys. And it's because of the underdog mentality, that what the world see is how they are really in a bad situation in Gaza and how people are getting killed over there. And they literally forgot what happened the 7th of October and what happened during the weeks before. all those suicide bombers, all those attacks that are happening here on a daily basis. And unfortunately, the algorithm of the social media is showing only one side. And then, of course, it fits the narrative of the other side, that's showing us in a bad light. And a lot of those posts and a lot of those criticism is about the IDF operating in a bad way, and it's a lot of propagandas videos and also fake AI videos and, all of those kind of stuff. And as I said, it's disappointing, but it's not surprising me. If I'm going to TikTok, it's eventually like created by China. So China is doing kind of like a quiet war against us and against the US by infiltrating with a social media content that shows the US and also us in a bad light, especially the IDF. For example, you could have seen a lot of American youngsters showing how Bin Laden charter is okay and why the 9/11 has happened, and it's like it's fine that it's happened because there is a reason for it. So this is about the social media.
Yeah, and I just want to say something about TikTok for the listeners. So algorithmically, it's been proven that China, TikTok, the company that is owned by privately, but also has a Chinese government influence in there, algorithmically, it's been proven that it's suppressing Israeli stories and amplifying hatred in a way that is completely disproportionate when it's compared to Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. So it's not just some wild theory, it's fact.
It's fact. No, seriously, like we saw it, we experienced it. You can see your engagement over there, and then you can see the other people engagement. And unfortunately, also you can see on Instagram that a lot of the Jewish supporters, when they are uploading content, eventually they are getting blocked by Instagram, that saying that they did something bad and they upload something bad. And what did they do?
And the reason is because what's happening is when you have a post, all of a sudden you have haters that are organized, that they amplify reports. And when you get enough reports on Instagram, algorithmically, they'll suppress your account. And that's, again, because of the numbers, because honestly, there's more of them than there are of us. Exactly. And there's no human being doing quality control. It's really just machines and algorithms.
Exactly. And it's continuous because eventually when they reported you once and then you got blocked, again, the algorithm is going to kind of like put the eyes on you and check what you're doing. And if you're going to upload content that are connected to the same content that you got blocked by because of it, so they're going to block you more and more and more. So this is the type of things. About the other facts, so eventually, the IDF did and do everything in the power to minor the casualties from the war. But eventually we have to look at the bigger picture. We are in a war. It's like, makes sense that there will be a casualties, for both sides. And, people are like, when ISIS kind of like conquered the area, and all the 86 countries were against it and attacked there, in the US and Britain, everybody went there. And there were like a lot of casualties from this war, but nobody said nothing. But when Israel is attacked by Hamas, that is the same organization in their charter and also their goals is like ISIS, apparently everybody care about what's going on, about the casualties and everything. But I guess it's only hypocrisy. It's not because they really care about the Palestinian life. It's because they hate the Jewish people and hate Israel. This is what drives them. And eventually, they're using the IDF, the army that is protecting the Israeli people and also protecting the Palestinian civilians over there. Although people probably going to say after that he's hallucinating, he's probably saying it because it fits with his narrative. But this is the true in the field. You can see many videos of Israeli soldiers saving Palestinian life, helping the elderly to cross from the humanitarian roads, giving them water, giving them food. There is like an Israeli soldier, I remember this video, that is protecting a young kid and his mom from Hamas attacks. And eventually what are they going to say about it on the social media? One narrative going to show the truth, that he literally protected him, but the other narrative going to say that he kidnapped the kid and he probably won't let him go. And that's what you see in the picture. But again, they're trying to fit everything that we're going to show them. If it's the leaflets, if it's those humanitarian roads, if it's the IDF soldier helping civilians over there, they're going to turn it around to look like we are doing something bad. And
Yeah, and I think that suits their narrative, because when we say they, we're talking about a very sophisticated marketing effort that has been seeded for around 20 years,
exactly.
Backed by BDS, backed by the Palestinian resistance movement, I guess, that is being well-funded and organized. And what they're actually doing is, what we're seeing now is the culmination of all of those efforts. So they've managed to brainwash globally a lot of people who really don't know any better. If you talk about the TikTok generation, you're talking about 18 to 25-year-olds. They really don't understand what's going on here. But as I've said before, pictures of dead babies sell. Explanations of why that baby is dead won't, because it's just fact. And fact is much less attractive or interesting than emotion. So what we're seeing actually is a huge marketing effort that has the results have come into being today. And it's very hard to fight that. So I think that that's really the reason why I wanted to bring you on, so that people can hear from you, even though a lot of people will say, well, this really suits their narrative, doesn't
Exactly.
it? But that's a result of the hatred. Like, it doesn't matter what we say. If we do right, we're wrong. If we do wrong, we're wrong. And that is a very, very dangerous place to be, because that really does remind me of the Holocaust. It just reminds me of, we were being silenced before we were even given a chance to speak. And it ended up with dead Jews and then dead everyone else. So that's not going to happen this time. We're talking about awful things. We're talking about war. We're talking about dead people. And ultimately, Shemtov, you and I are on the same page about the fact that we don't want this. I mean, I think all we want to do really is to be able to live side by side in peace with people as neighbors who don't want to kill us, and that we don't want to kill them. But if someone brings the fight to us and kills us and murders us and rapes our women and burns our families alive and beheads our children and elderly and kidnaps people, with over 130 people still at the time of this recording held in captivity, that's not an option. Let's go back for a second to the morning of October the 7th. Let's hear from your perspective about what happened. And just a minute before we do, I'll just say this. For those who are not familiar with the geography of Israel, it takes around 6 to 8 hours to drive from north to south. That's the length of Israel in a car. From east to west, anywhere between half an hour in certain areas, 45 minutes, that's east to west. That's the size of Israel. On the east side, there is what is known as the West Bank. Some people call it the occupied territories. Some people call it Judea and Samaria. And then in the southwest, on the border of Egypt, a strip of land called Gaza. Let's go back to October the 7th, the morning, and you tell us what happened.
So, of course, I will touch my story because this is what I know the best. So it was 6:30. I woke up from a siren. I first of all didn't understand what I'm hearing. I thought it's like an ambulance. And then I woke up my girlfriend and was like, Adar, listen, what is this? And she was like, no, this is not an ambulance. And she opened up her phone and saw the news that we are literally under attack, under a rocket barrage. And she started kind of like panic. Unfortunately, my girlfriend has a kind of like a panic disorder since the 2014 protective edge because of all the missiles that have been launched from Gaza.
That was another war, 2014 protective edge. That was the name of the operation. Yeah,
exactly. And so I had to, deal with that. And at the same time, I'm thinking in my head that I'm going to get a call any second from my commander to come back to the army. Because that's what usually happens, when we have this kind of attacks. But it wasn't a regular one. It wasn't just a rocket barrage. It was more than this because it didn't stop, And as I thought, I got a call that, guys, we have to go back to the army. So I pulled everything that I could, in seconds. If it's like underwear, it's clothes, everything that I thinking that will be beneficial for me. And I took her to her parents' house. I dropped her there, and then I drove to the base. Meanwhile, I'm starting to get those videos of terrorists inside Israel.
Who are you getting them from?
Telegram, friends, people start sharing everything that's usually, spread around.
And this wasn't people say, it's probably some terrorists. How many terrorists were there?
When I got the messages, people spoke about several, not like hundreds and hundreds, like we knew after that. And it was kind of like, to believe it, not believe it. It's a video from Israel. It's a video from
the fake news.
Where it's fake news. It's AI. We didn't know what we were looking at. So I didn't really, kind of pay attention to it. But I kept getting those videos and more. And people started talking about the Nova and Sderot. And then I saw the video of the Toyota Jeep with the terrorist on it shooting on police officer car. And then I realized, okay, we are in a war, like something really bad happened. And when I got to the base, I saw all the friends. It was nice to see them. And we start sharing those videos and talk about it. And like, did you saw this? Did you see this? And we didn't realize yet what's going on. We know it's a bad thing, but we didn't know the numbers. People talked about like 10 people that got murdered, and we was like, nah, it's not possible. And then, info start coming, and we realized that it's like a different level of war. And I had this argument with myself, what to do when I got the equipment and the weapon. Should I get 3 of us, go on my car and just drive to the south and do whatever we do, and with God's will, we're going to come out alive from it, or to listen to our commanders and go with all the units to the West Bank. This is where we usually serve, and we know the area like our back of the hand. And I decided to listen to our commanders because we still didn't know what's going on there, and it was a completely mess. And we figured that our commander probably know best where we need to be located. So this is why I stopped myself from going to the south.
Now, wait a second, just because I want to make sure that people understand. You were not in the army at that time?
No,
right,
I'm reserve duty.
You're reserve duty, which basically means you're a civilian, you're going about your day, you wake up in the morning, you see what's going on, and all of a sudden, and this is something important that people know, the army is made up of people. It's made up of people. This is not like the Marines, you're a Marine. We're all soldiers when there is a war. So just for context, you went into active duty of your own accord, and then, of course, all the people that you serve with in the reserves collectively started speaking to each other and what we're going to do. Okay, sorry, carry on. I just thought that was important.
No, that's good. That's good that you said it, because people probably doesn't know what's going on. It's not, as you said, it's not like the Marines. We're literally civilians. We have our jobs, we have our families, we have everything. And since the 7th of October, it wasn't Shemtov, the certified nurse or the basketball player. It was Shemtov, the Special Forces soldier that need to be out there for our existence, because this is a war for our existence. Right. So we went to the West Bank, and because we know the complicated situation that is going on there, we really were afraid that what's going on right now in Gaza will impact the West Bank and Judea and Samaria, because it's going to raise the violence and the hatred against the Jewish people. And that's why we decided to listen to our commanders and come there and do our job. And it's to protect the Israeli civilians that lives in this area.
So basically, Gaza's right now, the people around Gaza have been infiltrated. Our Israeli families kidnapped. Forces are not there, because this is what happened. It was a big screw up, not there. And all of a sudden, we have to think about 2 things. If we all go to Gaza, what's going to happen with the West Bank, which is around an hour away, or, an hour and a half away?
Even
less.
15 minutes from Jerusalem, from like in literally...
Right, and I think that's the bit that people don't understand. It's like, if the Arab communities in Gaza, if the Palestinians are in a war-like situation and there is violence, then tensions rise, emotions rise, and they start rising up, and they start galvanizing and affecting the vibe in the West Bank. And then they get angry. And then what happens when they get angry? There are towns there. There are cities there of Israelis. What happens when the mobs come out of there? And I think that that's important that people understand. You have to protect yourself in Gaza as these attacks are happening. You have to go into the West Bank and protect Israeli towns and cities and communities around there. I won't even get into the north because that's a whole other thing near Lebanon and Syria. But geographically, it's so important that people understand that we're surrounded. So you guys went to protect the West Bank.
Exactly. The Israeli civilians that are over there. And thanks God, when we came there, we've been like a lot of forces that came there. Like when we got there, we still didn't understand the full picture. We didn't know that people got kidnapped to Gaza. We didn't know how many people get slaughtered. And we started getting those news during the day and during the day after and during the weeks. Meanwhile, I'm starting to get these messages about friends of mine that have been in the Nova Festival, and people haven't heard from them for a while. If it was like a day, 2, 3 days. And unfortunately, those guys, 3 of them got slaughtered at the Nova Festival. And I've been there
what were their
2
names?
days ago. One of them is Ben Uri. Rest in peace. He's a good friend, a really great guy. He got slaughtered when he hid in a sewer tunnel.
In sewers?
With his friend. And they got both of them got slaughtered. And they found his phone on the ground. And they saw a video of him doing yoga, because this is how he dealt with stress.
Wow.
And he did yoga, and he's all filmed in a video, and it also showed in different TV channels. And also we got Ilan Moshe Yaakov. He was in the same unit as I. He came to party. I met him like a week before when we went to party to some big festival together. And there is a guy named, his nickname was Nesher.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to work with me in all those how do you say it in English?
Say it in Hebrew.
It's כאילו, חתונות שטח.
Oh, like weddings out in the open.
Yeah, exactly. Weddings out in the open. He used to do it with me together. He was a supplier, and he also worked me there. So for me, it was really hard.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So, meanwhile, you're getting those messages. And thanks God, I also have friends that survived the Nova, like On, that you met.
Yes.
And also Jamie, that they've been brave enough to lead people out of the Nova Festival and run from there. There is a guy that I knew. He wasn't a good friend of mine, but we traveled together in Greece. And I met him. His name is Ben Binyamin.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy drove all the way from Beersheba and went back to the Nova a couple of times to evacuate people from the Nova Festival. And unfortunately, one of the time when he came back, a Hamas terrorist shoot him. He was a really brave guy as well, doing this kind of action. It's heroic, and people need to appreciate him. And when we located, I'm going back for the West Bank. When we located there, we've been really next to Ramallah. And thanks God, we've been a lot of forces over there, so they couldn't really infiltrate or, trying to do some bad stuff. We've been there to stop that from happening. But during the days over there, since the 7th of October until now, I released from the reserve duty like a week ago. Until then, we saw every day people trying to shoot Israeli civilians, trying to shoot Israeli soldiers, trying to throw rocks. And I'm not speaking about those small rocks that people have been speaking about all over. Why? Those guys are children. They are like throwing pebbles. It's like boulders. They are throwing on cars and buses. Think about that. It's a bus or a car that drive 100 kilometers per hour. And when you are throwing a rock to the windshield of this car, it's like 95% that this car is going to be flipped, and probably the people that are in there will die, from their injuries or on the spot. And people need to realize that. So those guys are terrorists as much as the people that are shooting guns.
And not only that, I want to also bring people's attention to something happened around a week ago where an Israeli soldier called over a 14-year-old Palestinian boy, 14-year-old, to just check that he was unarmed. He walked up, and this is all on video. He walked up to the soldier. He kind of put his arms up. And as the Israeli soldier was checking him, he took out a knife and he started trying to stab the soldier.
So I want to correct you. He wasn't checked him. The guy came to him. He was like 14 years old. As you said, he's a kid. So he approached the soldier, and the soldier was really welcoming. They spoke. He didn't even check him. When you saw he was raising his hands, he was talking. He's not get checked by the soldier. But then, as you see in the videos, he literally pulled up the knife and started stabbing him.
And what did we do?
He ran away, and we had to eliminate him because eventually it's a terrorist. It doesn't matter the age.
Right. And then what happens is in the news, and this is what people see, you see, this is the headline: Israeli soldiers kill 14-year-old boy. And all context is thrown out of the window. And what ends up happening? the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces soldiers who are human beings, who have jobs just like Shemtov, just like you right here. You're not a genocidal killer that is killing 14-year-old boys. Sure, this is a war and we have made mistakes and we can talk about them too. But in this context, someone tried to kill a soldier.
Exactly.
And the soldier defended himself and other soldiers defended him too. And a 14-year-old boy was killed. Now, we have to think about who's to blame for that. We can blame the IDF, which is ridiculous, or you can blame the people that raised a 14-year-old boy to do something so stupid, which resulted in the loss of his life, indoctrinizing with hatred.
Exactly. And this is just one story. I can take you to a different story, for example, that probably nobody talked about it in the world, because again, when I will talk about it, you're going to understand the context and what happened. And then you're going to realize why people and the news didn't publish it out there and talked about the mistake. So in the Judea and Samaria, that you can call the West Bank as well,
which is like the occupied territory. It's like there are many different names for it.
There is different name for it. And so eventually...
Contested land. Contested land.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
So how do you manage to understand who is Palestinian and who is Israeli? So you got the cars, license plates. So the white ones showing that you're Palestinian, that you're from the area of Judea and Samaria, you live in Ramallah, Shechem, whatever. This is the white platelets. The yellow platelets show that you are from Israel territory. So it can be also Jewish, but it can also be Muslims or Christians, doesn't matter. Arabic people, doesn't really matter.
Because, again, people don't understand.
Exactly. And, we have a lot of different type of nations and people that lives here. Jewish, you got Muslims, you got Armenian, you got Christians, you got black, white, or whatever. Everybody lives here in peace, eventually inside of Israel.
Yeah.
And what happened that a car with 3 people inside, I'm going to come to what those people are, they had the white plates. That means that they live in Judea and Samaria. And they got crossed by a car with the yellow plates that drive, and eventually these guys from Israel. And what they did, those were 3 terrorists that came out with guns, and while driving, they shoot the driver that was with the yellow plate.
No.
And eventually, you know what happened? The guy with the yellow platelet was an Arab guy from East Jerusalem that came to visit his family in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. So they did a mistake, but nobody talked about it. Nobody mentioned it in outside, because it's a shame, because then you're showing that this side, the other narrative has mistake as well. And it's not fitting the propaganda and the narrative. And let me tell you another detail, another scoop. What is the job of those 3 guys that been in the car, those terrorists that shot this Arabic guy?
Tell me.
They're 2 doctors and 1 nurse from Ramallah Hospital.
And they knew. They are in on it.
And this is the difference. I'm a certified nurse, and I will never shoot an innocent civilians for no reason. And those guys literally picked up the gun and they got it as doctors and as nurses, and they literally shot what called Israeli civilians. And eventually it was an Arab person that lives in East Jerusalem, and came to visit his family.
What would you say to people that would say the same thing about you, though, or us, meaning, okay, well, yeah, he's a certified nurse, but all of a sudden he's a soldier and he's killing people.
Yeah, it's easy to do the equal, but...
No, I'm asking you to explain it. Because I know that you're saying, and I understand because I live here and I know your heart, the difference between us. But I want you to dig a little deeper right now with our listeners and really try and explain what it is that you will do to kill someone, why it would be that you would kill someone, and why it would be that they would kill someone.
The only reason that I will kill someone is if I got a threat on my life, or Israeli civilians as a threat on his life, or even a Palestinian as a threat on his life. I will act the same. And this is something that they need to understand. Even if an Israeli civilian will come to stab or shoot a Palestinian woman, kid, or every civilian that will be out there, I will treat them the same as I'm doing with the Palestinian that will come and try to murder an Israeli civilians. This is the thing that they need to understand. Eventually, they were going to come with a gun, knife, rock, Molotov, whatever. It's a weapons, it's weapons for me, it's equal weapons, because even with the smallest stone, as we saw in David and Goliath, you can kill someone. It really depends the situation. So this is the reason why I'm going to kill someone. And also, if it's from like far distance, then they're going to throw a Molotov, a rock, I'm not going to shoot them because it's not going to affect anyone. But it's from like a close distance, and I know that it can be a risk to Israeli civilians while they're driving or while they're walking the streets, I have to react. And they also have a new invention. They are using lasers to kind of like laser the eyes of the Israeli civilians while they are driving next to Arabs' houses. So, for example, in Ramallah, when we located there've been a building, and from the window, they had like a green and also blue laser, and they're aiming it to the Israeli drivers so they will do a car accident. And
so the difference is that these people are proactively trying to murder, and
because of an agenda, and this is what I came to say, it's because of an agenda and because of like an ideology. And we are not doing it because of an agenda and ideology. We're raised to adore life and treat everybody equal as human beings. But eventually those guys raised, and like the videos that I'm always talking about, one of the guys, an Arab Palestinian that literally is in favor of peace. But he said that since he's a young boy, his mother used to tell him that if he won't go to sleep now, a Jew will come and kill him. And this is the ideology that they get raised by. And this is why they're acting violently right now as we speak. And this is the difference between of us. I got told by my mom that if I want to eat, the police will come and, arrest me just so I can eat more. But nobody told me that an Arab will come and kill me. This is not the type of stuff.
Yeah, and I actually want to say something about that because, because of the following that I have, I got asked by a lot of people, but what about the settlers? What about the people who hate Palestinians and Arabs? And I want to talk about that for a second, because there are absolutely racist extremists that we have in Israel.
I agree.
But we live in a democracy, and we speak up against them. And, I can say that, don't want to talk about my politics. It's not a political show. But when I have an issue with the government, you'll find me on the streets. It's a luxury that we have, but that we created for ourselves, that we speak up. And over there, this ideology, this hatred is being fed. And that's really what we're up against. And the only way I feel that this situation has a chance of having a favorable solution where we can live in peace is if the mass indoctrination of hatred stops. So yes, you do have hatred in Israel on the extreme right. And by the way, you also have it on the extreme left. But it's not the mainstream, and people are speaking up against it. And there's a movement against it, but it doesn't represent the vast majority of people. And I think that that's the difference, that on the Palestinian side, and I'm not saying anything bad about Palestinians. I can't blame a 4-year-old boy or a 14-year-old boy. That's on the leadership. That's on the culture. But that is really what we're up against. But let's go back to you in the West Bank.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to people to understand how the West Bank, or Judea Samaria, you call it, is splitted by. There is like 3 areas.
Sure.
So we got area A. Let's start with area C. Area C is like the Jewish communities. Okay. People can call it settlements. I call it Jewish communities, and I will explain why later. You got area B, that is the roads and some industrial areas that Arabs and Israelis work together. For example, in the grocery shop, they're going to doing their shopping together, gas stations, restaurants, every day, like they're having their life together, And area A, it's an area, so in C, just like Israeli can be there, in B, both can be there, but in A, you are not allowed as an Israeli, as a danger for your life to get inside there. Not like area C, because if in area C an Arab by mistake will get inside, for example, Bet El, Ofra, whatever, all those communities out there, people just going to tell him, listen, you had a mistake, just turn around, Ramallah is that way, or wherever is that way. If an Israeli will go inside Ramallah, or Shechem, or Bethlehem, or wherever, is probably 90% will not come out alive. This is the difference between area C and area A. Now, when I'm going to area B, Jewish people lives there together, working together with the Palestinians, but we saw many cases of Palestinians using this advantage of the coexistence to attack and arm Israelis. For example, Rami Levy, in the industrial area of Geva Binyamin, we saw many attacks over there and terrorists that came to murder. So it's people that worked in Rami Levy, Palestinians that worked in Rami Levy, and woke up at a day, came with a knife and start stabbing the co-workers.
So this isn't just unique to the West Bank. This is also what happened in Gaza.
Also,
right? Tell us about that. Like what happened? So there's the Gaza Strip, and then there's a border between Gaza and Israel. Now, Israel was allowing, I'm not sure the number, was between 100 to 150,000 people, letting them over the border to work in Israel and to go back as standard. So a lot of these Palestinians in Gaza were working on farms, in kibbutzim, in construction, and going back. And something that, by the way, the Egyptians, with the Rafah crossing from Gaza, the Palestinians don't have that luxury. The border is closed. So
you saw the border?
Yeah, exactly.
It looked like a Trojan wall.
No, it looks like the Berlin Wall times 100. So basically, you could go as a Palestinian in Gaza to work in Israel with the Israeli public, but you could not do that with Egypt. So the same thing that you're talking about that happened in the West Bank was happening also in Gaza. The point I'm trying to make is there's a reason why we have an army protecting us. There is a reason why there is mistrust. There's a reason why a lot of our elderly Israelis and Jewish people over the decades have said, you can't trust the Arabs, which is something that our generation, I think we have a problem with saying that, because you've got to give the guy a chance. But it's very difficult to trust when that trust is abused, even by, if it's a minority, because it puts the fear of God into you, what's going to happen with your children, with your family. But that's also happening now. And it happened on October the 7th. People abused the trust. And a lot of people around the Gaza Strip who were employing Gazans were horrified to know that these people were gathering information for the massacres.
Exactly. For let's take Kfar Aza as an example.
I was there, I went there.
So Kfar Aza as an example, they Kitat Konenut, like the guys that are emergency that's supposed to protect the kibbutz whenever something happened, they locked their weapons in the weaponry. And what happened that the Arabs that worked inside of the kibbutzes give the exact location of the weaponry to the Hamas terrorists, and when those 4 or 6 people came to pick up the weapon, they got ambushed by Hamas terrorists that literally waited there because they knew exactly where the weaponry and that they are holding the weapons over there. So this is like even just a slight of an example of what happened in Kfar Gaza. If I'm going back to the West Bank, we spoke about the B area. B area is it's an open place for also Arabs and Israelis. So when you spoke about them getting inside of Israel, we are speaking about the sea area, literally inside of Israel or inside the communities in the sea area. This is where they are getting their permissions to get in. So we are really taking risk. And we saw that even during the war, when we still gave them permissions to go inside. Minute after, I got a video of 2 Palestinians that are construction workers inside a building in Rosh Hain. Rosh Hain is a city. They are taking like a hole and start like washing all the electricity inside of the house. And it's like a new house that just have been built. Think about that. If the civilians will come inside there and start playing with the electricity, they can get electric and electrify and die from it.
Yeah.
And, this is like the type of stories that people are talking about, and they're showing it as a reason why not to trust them and why to bring, different workers, for example, from India or every other place, and not from there. Because right now we are in a really delicate situation, and it's also impacting the 2-state solution or 1-state solution or whatever, our government will do. Because right now, with the ideology, and we know that 85% of the people that lives in the West Bank, Palestinians, support Hamas. So, for example, if there is an election right now, and let's say hypothetically that we're giving the West Bank back, let's say, to the Palestinian, not back to the Palestinian, to the Palestinian, so they can have their own country, and all the communities are coming back to Israel, you have 85% of the population there that support Hamas. So what's going to happen? There's going to be like in a democratic elections. Hamas is going to elect it in the West Bank. And then we're going to have 7th of October over and over and over again. So this is not the solution, in my opinion. Before we are going into some solution, we got to find out how we can eliminate Hamas as an infrastructure, as terrorist, and also as an idea. And the ideology of Israelis living in Israel are not allowed, need to be erased from their minds before we are going into a position that we can live together or live side by side.
Yeah, it's so depressing because I think we both know that this whole event has set us back decades in terms, because there's no trust.
Exactly.
And, even people like me who want a Palestinian state side by side with us, people who are not Israeli or Jewish or who don't understand this, I'm going to say again what you just said, Shemtov, is Hamas stands for the elimination of Israel as a state, and it stands for the elimination of the Jews as a people. If you look at their charter, which was updated, but their charter states death to all the Jews. And you can see that in October the 7th. That is what they stand for. So think about what you just said right now. The West Bank, 85% of the people that would make up a Palestinian state side by side with Israel, 85% of them, and this is based on polls conducted over the past couple of months, 85% of them support Hamas. They support the murder of you, Shemtov, and the murder of me and my family. How can we make peace with these people? I don't think that we can yet until, honestly, and maybe it's a patronizing word, maybe I certainly don't mean for it to be derogatory or demeaning, but deprogramming hatred and lies and the dehumanization of a people just because of who you've been taught that they are and not because of what they actually are, that is the work of decades. And it happened after the Second World War with Japan. It took around 2 or 3 decades. It happened in Germany after the Second World War. That's, I think, the only way that we'll reach a long-term solution. And we have it on our side too. But again, it's not the majority, and there are many, many people speak up against it.
Of course, as you said, I want to talk about the ones that you call the settlers and settlements. So when I was in the Judea and Samaria, and I was there for
Wait, and why are they called settlers? People say settlers all the time. They're called settlers because they settle the land. They're farmers. They are living in those areas, and they're settling the land. But the dispute is because a lot of Jewish people feel and know that this is Judea and Samaria. This is actually a part of Israel. It's contested land, but it's land that Israel is willing to give up for peace. But sorry, go ahead.
No, so that's fine. And when I was there, let's, for example, say during my regular serving time and also this time, so I'm not going to call them maybe you guys want to call them settlements, I want to call them communities. But I have to say that they're splitted to groups. So you got the amazing people over there that lives in those communities that are even better people than I. Seriously, what they're doing for the families, for Israel, the sacrifice that they're giving from themselves and from their families, risking themselves living there because they do believe we are indigenous to this land, means a lot. And there are the other side.
But why does it mean a lot?
Because for me, living out there, and I live here in Israel, next to Tel Aviv. It's the easy life. I'm close to everything. I'm kind of protected and everything. But living there is risking your life because eventually that there is a 24/7 threat on your life and your family life by hostile Arab villages and terrorists that are waiting on the bus stations. And, where I served, a couple of weeks before I arrived this base, there were an Arab moving from one of the villages with a knife in his hand, run to a crossroads and try to stab soldiers, in the entrance to the community. And this is the stuff that they are dealing on a daily basis. One of our soldiers' parents drove to bring him food, before Shabbat, he's religious, and they got thrown huge rocks on their cars. And when they arrived to us, we saw a huge hole in the windshield, the back windshield.
You can die from that.
Sorry?
You can die from that.
Of course. Thanks God, somebody protected him from up there, and probably the husband drive well. But, you cannot count of those kind of stuff. You have to protect your civilians. So they are sacrificing their security for us, because this land eventually, we can argue about it, but I do believe we're indigenous to this land. Eventually, if we're going to go back to the history, Palestine called eventually by the Roman as an assault to us. But before that, let's talk about what happened before that. It's eventually our land. You can read the Bible, you can read the Quran, you can read everything that literally showing you and lead you that there was an Israel before, maybe with a different name, but it's still Israel. It's still the Jewish people that lives here. And people are kind of like, ignoring the fact because it's easy, it's easy to hate us. It's easy to open, develop this minority mindset, the underdog mindset.
Not understanding that, honestly, we're the underdog.
Exactly. That's the problem, there. And I understand because, again, as we spoke about social media and all of this stuff. And as again, I'm going back to the other side, the other group of the settlers. Those guys can also harm me because they are really right extremists and they do believe it doesn't matter the cost, they need to live where they live right now. And those are the guys that we're seeing attack those Palestinian villages. And if I will come to stop them, they're going to attack me as they're attacking the Palestinians. And you got to understand this. We are against those kind of violence, those kind of terrorists as well, as I said before. If a terrorist will come and try to shoot an Palestinian civilians, innocent Palestinian civilians, I'm going to treat them as well as I'm treating a Palestinian and going to come and trying to murder an Israeli civilians. And this is something that the IDF values are based on. Of course, there is exceptions. Not everybody are 100%. We're going to have our mistakes.
You know what? Let's talk about that. I don't think enough Israelis talk about that. Let's talk about our fuck-ups. Let's talk about them, yeah. Tell us. Where have we fucked up?
I think that the biggest fuck-up started the 7th of October. Us as human beings, we, in my opinion, of course, I'm not a government official or something. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I think that we fucked up in our arrogance and in our belief that something like this cannot happen to us because we are too strong. And what happened that they used the day, it was Saturday, it was an holiday, so less forces are in the base. And we kind of allowed it because eventually we said, even though there is speculations, people are saying that they do alert to the intelligence and to the IDF commanders about stuff that are going on in Gaza, some preparations and bomb noise and weapons and etc.
Yeah, we got our fence, we got our cameras.
Exactly. So we relied on our technology. And this is, I think, one of the problems that we kind of start to rely only on technology and really not invest on our, let's say, human resources.
Yeah, on the ground.
Exactly, on the ground. And what happened that they took the battalions away and put them in Judea and Samaria because this is more reasonable that something will happen there during the holidays than in the Gaza Strip. And what happened that eventually we abandoned the border and we left few soldiers out there. And what happened that they attacked us and we weren't ready. And I think this is the biggest fucked up because we disappointed our civilians because eventually we let them got kidnapped by those animals back to Gaza and they are still out there. And I know that the government and IDF doing everything in our power to bring them back, in every cost. And eventually we have Hamas and other countries that are really doing our hard life, by giving us some imaginary terms that we really cannot handle it. Because eventually, for example, I do believe that everybody need to get back home.
Absolutely.
Safely.
Absolutely.
But it's really crazy to put I don't know, they gave some terms of the IDF should evacuate Gaza and stop the war. This is something that we cannot happen because one of our goals, and we said so, for us not to repeat the 7th of October, we got to eliminate Hamas infrastructure and idea. And this is something that we cannot achieve by negotiation. This is something that, in my opinion, can be achieved only in military pressure.
Absolutely.
And, this is kind of the terms and stuff that they're saying that we cannot allow.
Let's go back to what you were saying, which was the fuck up. So the fuck up was definitely that. I actually wanted to hear about the mistakes that we've made that we read about on social media about all the things that Israel is doing that is wrong. Now, the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I think we're at war, and in war, mistakes happen.
Of course.
And I think that we should talk about them, to acknowledge them, and that's what I wanted to hear from you.
So I think, like, when you're saying mistakes that those people are talking about on social media, most of it are propagandas and like fake stuff. Again, as I said, they're taking a photo or video and they're taking it out of the context, as you said as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like we're fucked up, but eventually it's not a fuck up. It's something that we're doing in favor of the Palestinian people or wherever. I think that the biggest fuck up after the 7th of October, and I cannot blame anyone for it, is the 3 hostages that got unfortunately killed by our own force.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm saying unfortunate, and I cannot blame anyone because I know how a soldier feels in a battlefield. I was there in 2014 inside of the Gaza Strip. I know exactly how a soldier feels there. And it's not like that they've been there like a day or two. They've been there like for weeks. So the pressure and the intense of the war is just
the fear
uprising, and the fear as well. And eventually, when all those terrorists are dressed up as civilians, you're starting to get pressured.
Paranoid as well.
Exactly, paranoid. Eventually, we saw so many so-called civilians that dressed up as civilians, and eventually we find out that they are terrorists. We saw their RPGs, shooting RPGs with civilian casual, wearings.
Yeah, and that's a tactic. It's an absolute tactic.
And, they can say, yeah, but they were with the white flag and no shirts and no pants and no nothing. But again, as I said, you have to think about the bigger picture. And those soldiers are really under pressure. They have lack of sleep, and they are human beings.
Yeah.
Human beings do mistakes. And unfortunately, they shot those 3 people out of a mistake. I know that
even the mother.
I want to come to this, that the mother literally said, like, one of the hostages that got eliminated, unfortunately, by our forces, came to the soldiers that shot them and told them, listen, guys, I'm not judging you. I love you. I appreciate it. And I want you, the first thing that you're doing when you're coming back home is to come and have a dinner with me. And this is how much, I got a lot of respect to this woman, a lot of appreciation, because eventually it's her kid.
It's unbelievable.
It's, it's like her baby. Yeah. Eventually doing this kind of action and not judging those soldiers because she understands the difficult terms and the difficult situations that they are in.
Listen, it's great. It's beyond greatness. It is the height of humanity. And also, listen, I hate to use the term critical thinking, but for a mother of a hostage to welcome the soldiers who accidentally killed her son, someone that they were trying to save, in the act of their duty, for her to forgive them and also try and help them, is the height of humanity. So this was a mistake. What about mistakes that we have made against the Palestinians?
I think that during the years, this is something that, of course, the government probably can answer. It's just my own opinion.
Of course.
Yeah. But I think that during the years, we did a lot of mistakes in our approach, to some of the deals that we had. So we gave them a lot of deals to have their own countries. But I think that even with this, gave them their own free. Let's go, for example, to 2005 when we evacuated all the Israelis from Gush Katif. Gush Katif is inside of the Gaza Strip. It's 8,000 Israelis that lives in there. So we called it the Gush Katif, and we dislocated them from the area so the Palestinians can have their own country.
Yeah, let me just give some context. So in Gaza in 2005, as you're saying, basically there were Israelis living in the Gaza Strip.
Exactly.
And we unilaterally withdrew our armed forces and we evacuated at great cost all of these Israelis from proper Israeli land. We basically gave it back. And that was the opportunity for the Palestinians to do something.
It's opportunity, but also a mistake.
Sure.
This is why I'm saying it's a mistake, because eventually we did believe that something going to change and something going to happen. But I guess that we kind of knew what's the PLO and Hamas, because eventually PLO and Hamas are different in their way of action, but they got the same end goal.
The Palestinian Authority.
The Palestinian Authority, exactly. And both of them, the same end goal for them is to eliminate Israel. Like for them, Israel not supposed to be exist. It's supposed to be in an Arab land.
Mm-hmm.
And when we get back the Gaza Strip to the Palestinian Authority to control there, I guess that we're supposed to still have some sort of army, like a military inside of there, just to make sure that something like what happened on the 7th of October, like the preparations. So I'm thinking about the 2005 as kind of like the start of the preparations.
Sure.
To commit the 7th of October. So when you get Hamas elected democratically over there, this was supposed to be like in a red alarm for you. Red alert.
Let's just, so when we evacuated, when we left that area, the Palestinians had the opportunity to decide their fate. And there were elections. Hamas won. Remember, Hamas is a terrorist organization dedicated to the elimination of the state of Israel. They won. And they won with very gruesome means. They also killed a lot of Palestinian Authority politicians. And all of a sudden, you had a terrorist state, meaning a population that was being actively led by a terrorist organization on our border. And for the last almost 20 years, there have been countless rocket attacks from that area. So you're saying the election itself and the leadership should have been a red alarm. But also everything that was happening in the last 2 decades almost.
Exactly. So when you said active lead, but they also mislead the Palestinians, because what happened that before Hamas, they had the Fatah, and the Fatah were corrupted, and they took all the money to themselves, and there were being like poverty over there, and people didn't have jobs, and eventually when you don't have job, you live in poverty, you don't have food for your kids, you started to get angry and start to make you can be a criminal. Eventually, you're going to do whatever it takes to supply, food or water to your family. And that's why I guess the biggest decision that happened by the Palestinians is to elect Hamas, because they want to eliminate Fatah, this corrupted government. But what they didn't know, that Hamas is going to do the same, but even worse, because they're going to bring death and hell on them by attacking, their own Palestinians, civilians, but also Israel. And they knew exactly how we're going to respond. They knew exactly how we're going to respond on the 7th of October to what happened. So, in my opinion, also one of the biggest mistakes that we had, that eventually we had to protect those Palestinians that, in my opinion, they did mistake by choosing Hamas. And we did really want to give them their own independence, but in what cost? And in my opinion, as a government, it was part of our territory. We're supposed to kind of lead them and trying to help them. I know it's hard, and probably people would have say, hey, you don't really give them independence and this and that, but they also saying it right now. So it wasn't really matters. But I think that if the Israeli government was part of the, let's say, not part of the election, but kind of like help the Palestinian people that are over there and kind of like monitor Hamas from close hand, it was different scenario, because they probably will complain a couple of years of the Israeli government are still there and blah, 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 blah. But we haven't got to a point that they will bomb us and do all those suicide attacks, and the people in Gaza probably lived better. But this is just an assumption. But I don't see a lot of other mistakes. I don't know. Maybe there are like little stories that I don't really familiar with.
So about the soldiers and the IDF right now in the last few months? No.
Oh, probably they have, but I'm not familiar with all the stories. Not everything is out there, and not everything is really correct. So it's really hard to understand the full picture if you're not talking to this person like one-on-one. So this is, I think, the mistakes, again, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Other than that,
No, that's fine. Let me switch gears and ask you a question about going back to the day. So all of a sudden, on October the 7th, you find yourself in the West Bank?
Yeah, exactly. Leave everything behind. My family, my work, everything, stop playing basketball, leave my team, although I have my duty to them, to come and do my best on court and outside the court so we can take the championship. And, I left my girlfriend back at home, my parents, and also my brother left my parents.
How long were you stationed there?
For 4 months.
And what did you do? And what was it like? What were you doing? What was the day to day?
The day-to-day was to protect the Israeli civilians. By day is to kind of like security guard some areas that can be really hard. For example, the entrance to the communities, ways on the roads that we know that usually Palestinians coming there and throwing rocks.
So checkpoints?
Not checkpoints.
Just presence?
It's just presence, to show, secure the area, give some, insurance for the civilians that live there, Palestinians, also Israelis, because again, as I said, if it's like an also terrorist that is from, like an Israeli terrorist from those really radical settlements, we're going to handle him as well. So this is what happened during the days, and during the nights we had, special operations to bring back some and arrest some really hard terrorists that planned to do terror attacks or did terror attack and haven't been caught. We had some guy that came with his car, shot like an Israeli woman with her baby in the car and ran away. And
did they kill them? They killed?
Thanks God, he just injured the wife. The baby was safe. They are alive, thanks God, right now.
God.
But we found them just 2 days after, and we came to arrest him in his village. And this is the type of stuff that we usually did at night. We brought a lot of really hard, let's say, and sophisticated terrorists that had crazy plans that I cannot talk and cannot mention right now.
I want to actually ask you a question, and if you can't talk about it, then of course don't. I want to try and bring everything that you said about what you learn in the IDF and the purity of arms and to protect the sanctity of life as much as you can on any side, as much as humanly possible. But I want to bring that education to the personal, which is Shemtov. You're on the ground. You are going in to extract terrorists, people who have caused harm, who are trying to cause death and mayhem to other people. They have families. They have children. They have brothers and sisters and aunts just like us. And of course, when we read the news, what you hear is Israeli soldiers killed, or Israeli forces entered and destroyed a house, and then we're not hearing the whole picture. So you're on the ground. You have to extract someone who and the authorities know has committed an act of terror or is planning to based on intelligence. How does that pan out on the ground in terms of you doing your job?
So first of all, let's go before we are entering, the village and entering the terrorist house. There is an intelligence. Before we are going to those operations, we are studying the person. And every time there is no chance that there will not be an evidence, because again, we're a democratic country. We're not going to arrest everybody that just, came to our mind. Yeah, this guy's a terrorist. Yeah, he might be this and this, so we're going to arrest him. There is always an really hard evidence.
Like checks and balances?
Everything. It's not only check balances, but there is like a proof that he called, he wrote, he did something like...
Where does that come from?
This is something that I cannot mention,
okay.
But you can use your imagination. But we got this intelligence eventually, and we got the evidence because eventually, after we arrest him, he's going to the court. He's not going straight to jail, and that's it. He's going to court. He's judged by the court, and then they are deciding what to do with him.
Is this a military court or civil?
No. It's a civil court that eventually, probably there are some military judges over there, but it's a civil court that they are getting judged by what they did, and they are sentenced to a regular prisoner.
And they're held in Israeli prisons if they're found guilty.
That is specified to terrorists and people that done really bad things against Israel.
And there's no death penalty here in Israel.
No, there is no death
terrorists
penalties.
Once they are brought into the prison system. I mean, if they are on the ground and pose a threat, of course.
100%. So for me, it was really important to mention it, that we are working as a democratic country and democratic army to bring them to justice. And then I'm going back to when we are getting inside those villages and inside those apartments. So as you said, those guys are families. So I want to tell you something. A lot of them, I'm saying from my personal experience, when we enter their home, I had many times that they literally pushed their wife, their kids, their dads, their moms on us so they can run away from the window or wherever.
Like physically, they
Literally
put them in between
physically,
you?
when we are waking them, they literally push, because eventually they are sleeping next to someone most of the time. They literally push them on us so they can run away. They literally meant to sacrifice their family, because eventually,
How do you explain that, Shemtov?
this is the mentality and I guess the ideology and the values that they raised on. Like, if it was me, I would like just come and probably or resist by myself if I'm putting myself inside their shoes, or just like giving them their hands and like arrest me, but don't hurt my family. But this is not the mentality. They don't care. They're really, each of them is for themselves. They're really, how do you say it? Like, כאילו אנוכיים, selfish.
Yeah, narcissistic.
They're really narcissists. They're really selfish guys. And eventually this is like a lot of what happens.
Well, you actually hear it in the rhetoric of the fundamentalists when someone here dies, like in Israel, it's an immense sadness. It's a loss of life. It's the family is broken. The community is broken. And I'm not saying that you don't have that on the Palestinian side, the loss of life. But what you do have, I think, with the Palestinian rhetoric is when someone is lost in, let's call it the fight, they are martyrs.
Exactly.
And martyrs are celebrated. And if you actually stop to think about that, what that actually means is their death is celebrated. So when someone falls in the line of duty on the Islamic radical fundamentalist side, then the leadership over there celebrates that. And they died for the cause. Think about a suicide bomber. They're doing their duty. I actually see the correlation between that kind of rhetoric and also a person who is in his home pushing his family on you is thinking to himself, this is the price of the cause. Also my family, also my children, also my wife. And it's just shocking to me. And of course, I'm not saying this about all Palestinians. I'm talking about the radicals. Just what you're saying is shocking. That I didn't know.
That's crazy. Like one time I remember there was like a bodyguard, or really bigger. You see me, I'm like a big guy. And he was even bigger.
He is a big guy.
Than me.
You are a big guy, yeah.
He was even bigger than me. And this guy was so into the cause, as you said, that he pushed his wife on us and he jumped from the third floor, broke his two legs and kept running. And eventually when we came to arrest him again, he was with, how do you say it, Givis?
Yeah, cast on?
He was with two casts on his legs, so he couldn't move when we came the second time to arrest him. But eventually this is how driven they are. So I'm going back to how we act inside the house.
Please.
So when we are breaching the house, of course, we're doing it quietly. We are not attacking all the other apartments. For example, let's say it's a building. Let's say 95% of the time, we got a specific intelligence about the apartment itself. So we are not hurting the neighbors. We are not arresting them. We are really determined and specify about the apartment. So we're not doing any other damage to the building or to the people that are out there. So when we are going inside the house, usually we do take the kids and the women in the house to a different place. So they are not going to be in the sight of what's going on with their father, brother, son, whatever, because eventually they might be innocent. They might know what is planning. But again, we do treat them as innocent civilians. So we are not harming them. We are literally doing it like really peacefully, taking them to different rooms. And for example, if they have conditions or something, we have also a medic inside our group. So he's together with them to supply whatever they need. God forbid, heart attack or whatever. And those kind of stuff happened to us during our services. They were in our service, and he's there to treat them. Meanwhile, we are handling the terrorist. If he's resisting us, so we have to do what we have to do. But if he's coming in peace, you won't see us even aggressive with him, because this is what we are.
You're in job mode. I mean, this is your job. This is
exactly. But again, in job mode, you know that this guy are planning to do something bad. It can be your parent or your brother or your sister or even your friend that is going to be murdered because of his plans. And we still treat them as human beings because we understand that there is no point to harm him or do whatever bad because he he's planning to do it or he did it because he already did it. So you do want to get the best out of it and not take it to the extreme, even if you have like, you got the anger and you got the will to kind of like revenge about what he did or what he's planning to do. But this is the difference between us as soldiers and as IDF soldiers and between Hamas, Hezbollah, and all the others. We got the humanity inside of us. We got the values of not hurting people. Like, we're arresting them and take them peacefully back to our base or wherever. So this is something that people need to understand.
Yeah, I want to actually, because I know that I'm cognizant of time and unfortunately we have to stop, but you have an opportunity right now to speak to people who are not Jewish, certainly not Israeli, live abroad, see the news. What would you like to tell them in parting? What would you like them to be left with from Shemtov, the person, the human being, the guy with the girlfriend, the guy who loves basketball, the certified nurse, the guy who's got a job? What would you like people who are in the middle ground? They don't know. They just see things on the news. They have no idea what's going on. What do you want them to be left with after this conversation from your heart?
So first of all, you mentioned critical thinking. And I think the critical thinking is really important here because you cannot take everything that you see and listen to or hear to as like 100% true. Go check the facts yourself. If you can come to Israel and see it in your own eyes, this is going to be the best because it's going to give you the really big picture of what's going on here. So critical thinking, this is first thing. Second thing is, you heard our conversation. You can also hear different other conversations that we had before and other conversations of different people. And you can listen to our stories and understand that we are human beings before we are IDF soldiers or before we are Israeli civilians or before everything else. And the values that leads us and leads all the right people, that are into life and adore life is values that are in common to all of us. It doesn't matter if we are Jewish or Christians, black or white, it doesn't really matter. If you adore life and your values are into humanity, you're going to really understand which side right now supposed to protect himself and win this war and which side are playing the innocent and playing our minds and our kids' minds in order to eliminate this right side. So I do, as you heard myself, I'm really into peace. I'm really forced to be here. None of us want to be in this war. None of us want to fight. As I said, I'm a certified nurse. I got family back at home. I do want to play basketball and, playing with my teammates and enjoy life. But unfortunately, I'm here because I'm enforced to be here, and it's my duty to protect our country and our existence because it's a war for our existence. It's not a war that we can just, play by ear and something will come out of it. So I do want you guys to believe in us, to believe in the power of human beings, the power of humanity. And I wish you an amazing day. And I hope to see you in Israel and to meet you in person, to tell you my story and to show you everything that is really beautiful about this country and about us as the human beings that lives here in coexistence.
Shemtov, thank you for giving us the time. Thank you for your service. Thank you for showing your humanity in a very, very difficult situation. And I'll see you on the basketball courts.
Sounds good. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Well, that's it. Thank you for joining me on I'm That. I hope you enjoyed the chat, and I hope you'll join me for our next guest. In the meantime, definitely hit subscribe, whether you're on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, or any other platform. And if you can, leave a comment, give it a like, and tell your friends. That would be brilliant. Stay tuned for the next show, and see you soon.